Every fiscal year, the United States Department of Defense simply loses track of $2 trillion. It doesn't burn. It isn't stolen by foreign adversaries. It just vanishes into a classified ledger labeled Unacknowledged Waived Special Access Programs. If a civilian misplaces $50 on a tax return, they face a federal audit. When the Pentagon loses the gross domestic product of a medium-sized country, they call it national security. The ultimate shield for this financial hemorrhage isn't a heavily guarded bunker. It is a dry lake bed in the Nevada desert. We are going to examine how Groom Lake isn't a holding cell for extraterrestrial biology. It is the most successful, legally untouchable money laundering operation for the military-industrial complex in human history. The greatest trick the defense sector ever pulled was convincing the public to look for flying saucers. As long as millions of tourists are staring at the sky waiting for little green men, nobody's looking at the congressional budget sheets. If you want to hide a $50 billion aerospace monopoly, you don't build a better vault. You build a better conspiracy theory. Let's open the black book. The procurement cycle. The machine initiates in the fluorescent-lit accounting bays of a prime defense contractor. Lockheed, Northrop, Boeing. The corporate logo on the lobby wall is irrelevant. The mechanism is identical. Let's observe the structure through the eyes of a senior cost analyst. We will designate him the Auditor. The Auditor is brilliant, meticulous, and entirely naive. He tracks material burn rates, titanium alloys, radar-absorbent composites. He ensures that a $300 million stealth airframe comes in just under the congressional budget limit, pacifying the oversight committees. But an anomaly disrupts the workflow. The Auditor uncovers a massive, recurring invoice for classified atmospheric calibration, routing through a dummy corporation operating out of Las Vegas. He digs through the supply chain. He finds a material order for a propulsion casing that defies basic thermodynamic limits. The costs are astronomical, and they are completely off the official books. He expects a commendation. He brings the files to the Vice President of Special Projects, assuming he has just caught a massive corporate leak. The Vice President does not fire him. He locks the door. He slides a heavy, unclassified folder across the desk. Inside is a non-disclosure agreement backed by the Department of Energy and a Yankee white clearance badge. The Vice President informs him that exposing the leak would violate the Espionage Act. Managing the leak, however, comes with a 300% salary increase. The Auditor looks at the badge. He realizes that systemic corruption is just a matter of proper classification. The corporation did not eliminate the leak. They simply classified the man who found it. The compartmentalization trap. The Auditor is relocated to the Groom Lake facility, Sector 4. He expects to step into the bleeding edge of physics. Instead, he walks into the ultimate bureaucratic quarantine. This is the compartmentalization trap. He works in a subterranean vault. He is given a single, isolated data set, the thermal decay rate of a synthetic metamaterial. He never sees the engine it belongs to. The engineers building the engine never see the airframe. The pilots flying the airframe never know who funded it. The government ensures that no single human mind holds the complete blueprint.
If a foreign intelligence service compromises a scientist, they steal a puzzle piece, not the puzzle. But the auditor soon realizes this fractured system serves a dual purpose. Because no one knows what the final product looks like, no one can accurately audit its cost.
He's ordered to sign off on budget overruns that defy logic. $10,000 for a single specialized screw. $4 million for a diagnostic software patch. The money isn't paying for the screws. The money is being funneled into dark projects that Congress legally cannot be briefed on. The auditor stops asking what he is building. He signs the invoices. He funnels billions into the unacknowledged abyss. He realizes that extreme secrecy isn't a byproduct of the technology. The technology is just a convenient excuse for the secrecy. The actual product being manufactured in the Nevada desert is the black budget itself. The unacknowledged waived SAP.
As the auditor ascends the internal hierarchy of Groom Lake, he's introduced to the absolute apex of legal invisibility. In the intelligence community, there is classified, and then there is the Special Access Program. But even within SAPs, there are tiers. The auditor is promoted to manage the books for an unacknowledged, waived SAP. The word unacknowledged means the Department of Defense will publicly and legally deny the program's existence. The word waived means the Secretary of Defense has determined that briefing the standard congressional oversight committees is a direct threat to national security. The only civilians legally permitted to know where the money goes are the congressional gang of 8. 8 politicians tasked with auditing a $1 trillion labyrinth of aerospace black ops. It is a mathematical impossibility.
The auditor becomes the gatekeeper of the bigot list. This is the strictly siloed roster of individuals who are read in to the program. He doesn't deal in dollars anymore. He deals in allocations. He executes financial alchemy, shuffling billions between Title 10 military operations and Title 50 covert intelligence budgets. The money vanishes from a naval shipbuilding ledger and reappears as a classified research grant for a Nevada-based dummy corporation. He realizes that the entire mythology of Area 51, the crashed saucers, the alien autopsies, is weaponized counterintelligence. The military doesn't debunk the UFO sightings. They actively encourage them. A populace chasing ghosts in the desert is a populace that isn't asking where their tax dollars went.
The corporate carve-out. The ultimate illusion of the black budget is the belief that the United States government actually owns the bleeding-edge technology hidden in the Nevada desert. They don't. The auditor is tasked with constructing the corporate carve-out. He uncovers a lethal flaw in government research: the Freedom of Information Act. If a federal agency holds the technical data for a revolutionary propulsion system, a persistent journalist can eventually subpoena it. The solution is aggressive privatization. The auditor legally transfers the patents, the schematics, and the physical metamaterials directly to the prime defense contractors: Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Mattel. Once the technology enters the private sector, it is legally classified as proprietary intellectual property. It becomes utterly immune to public oversight.
The government is no longer developing the future. They are simply leasing it from private corporations at a 2,000% markup. The auditor watches the revolving door spin. He processes payments authorized by 4-star generals who approve massive black budget contracts. 2 years later, those same generals retire from the Pentagon and immediately accept 7-figure board positions at the exact corporations they just funded. It isn't treason. It is standard operation procedure.
The auditor sits in his subterranean skiff, staring at a spreadsheet that dictates the technological trajectory of the human race. He realizes that the defense industry is no longer a vendor for the state. It is a sovereign nation operating within its own borders. The permanent clearance.
By this stage, the auditor is no longer managing spreadsheets. He is managing reality. He is granted a permanent Yankee White clearance. He is read in on the core anomalies. He oversees the funding for a specific propulsion housing stored in Sector 4. It is an object that completely ignores aerodynamic drag. He doesn't marvel at the physics. He worries about the liability. He understands that if the civilian sector possessed this technology, the global fossil fuel economy would collapse overnight. Trillions of dollars in energy infrastructure would instantly become worthless. The auditor's primary directive is no longer defense. It is market stabilization.
The technology is purposefully kept in a perpetual state of classified research. It is tested, shelved, and hidden in a silo, not because it doesn't work, but because it works too well. The auditor's personal life begins to disintegrate. He resides in a heavily guarded, hyper-sterile compound in Nevada. He makes $3 million a year in off-book consulting fees. But the clearance isn't a badge. It is a biological tether. He realizes he can never leave the country. He can never attend a technical conference. He must submit to aggressive, randomized polygraph interrogations every quarter. He understands that the security protocols aren't protecting the technology from foreign spies. The protocols are protecting the technology from him.
The breaking point doesn't arrive via an espionage breach or a stolen hard drive. It arrives via a routine threat matrix update. A newly appointed defense secretary, a civilian outsider, demands a comprehensive audit of the unacknowledged programs. He wants to force the private defense contractors to surrender the exotic metamaterials back to the government. The auditor watches the machine protect itself. They don't assassinate the defense secretary. That is sloppy. That creates martyrs. Instead, they trigger an administrative blockade.
The auditor's corporate handlers instruct him to invoke proprietary trade secrets. They legally block the Pentagon from accessing its own funded research. The defense contractors threaten to freeze the supply chains for standard military hardware unless the audit is dropped. The defense secretary backs down in less than 72 hours. The auditor sits in a dimly lit conference room, watching the politicians retreat. He finally grasps the ultimate rule of the black budget. The government doesn't control the secrets. The secrets control the government.
The auditor packs his briefcase at the end of a 14-hour shift. He locks his terminal. He hands over his security badge at the checkpoint. He drives through the heavily fortified gates of Groom Lake, back into the blistering Nevada sunset. He possesses a bank account that rivals the GDP of a small nation. He has seen the absolute limits of human engineering. And he is utterly, permanently trapped.
He realizes that the non-disclosure agreement was never a contract. It was a life sentence. He cannot publish his findings. He cannot commercialize the technology. He cannot even tell his own wife where he goes every morning. He looks in his rearview mirror. A matte black SUV has been trailing him for 12 miles. It's not Russian intelligence. It's his own corporate security detail, ensuring he never suffers a moment of unexpected candor. He is the richest prisoner in the desert. He has spent his entire career keeping the greatest discoveries in human history buried in the dark, simply to protect a balance sheet. You see a young, brilliant aerospace graduate on the television giving a hopeful speech about the future of commercial space travel. You want to warn him that the future has already been built, and it is currently locked in a vault, gathering dust, waiting for the fossil fuel industry to die. But instead, you just turn off the television. You pour a glass of bourbon. You sit in the dark. Somewhere, a seismic sensor trips. A new budget is approved, and the machine requires a new architect. You have reached the final layer of the black box. You are the custodian of the impossible, and you are currently being audited by your own shadow.